These swatches look identical. Same deep ribs, same cozy texture, but they are really, really not the same. This one is harder to knit and way, way harder to fix mistakes. So why would you knit this instead of this? Let's find out. Hey, nice to see you. Today is all about brioche knitting, specifically what it actually is structurally and how it differs from its almost twin, Fisherman's rib. Also, why it intimidates people and whether it's actually worth learning. Because here's my hot take. Two-color brioche is spectacularly beautiful, like this, or this. It has very cool structure, and I love structure in my knitting, but that structure comes with consequences, especially in garments. So we're going to go straight to the hand cam and take a closer look at what's actually going on with this particular advanced knitting technique. Here are our two swatches. This one is brioche, and this one is Fisherman's rib. Here's another card where you can see brioche, Fisherman's rib. You can see how much they look alike on this card and how much more they look alike on my swatches. From a distance, they're almost interchangeable. There are deep ribs, there's loft, there's lots of texture, but they are built very differently. And that structural difference changes how they behave and how challenging they are both to knit and to correct as you knit. We'll start with the Fisherman's rib. In Fisherman's rib, you're working every stitch, and it's created by knitting into the stitch below the stitch on the needle. I'm just going to start by slipping this edge stitch. So instead of working into the stitch and knitting it, we're putting the needle into the stitch below, knitting it, pulling it back through the stitch below, and dropping both of them off the needle. We'll just purl this guy. The stitches in between get purled, which you will see is different from what happens with brioche. Into the stitch below, knit, pull through and drop off, and purl the next stitch. When you look at the stitches on the needle, they just look like normal stitches. There's nothing paired with them. We're creating that pair by knitting into that stitch below and dropping off the one on the needle. You can see the elongated stitches when I pull this down vertically. And it's also super stretchy horizontally, of course. But structurally, it's just one stitch per column. Let's take it off the needle and see what we've got. So when we pull it off the needle, it does that thing that ribbing does, where the knit stitches pop to the front and the purl stitches pop to the back. But it's still pretty under control. I can get these stitches back onto my needle without a lot of issue or getting too confused. If I had to ladder down and re-knit these stitches, just knowing that I need to go 2 down instead of 1, I can pretty easily fix whatever mistakes I've made. It's not super overwhelming. There are no paired stitches, no hoods, and no slip stitches to deal with. By contrast, if we look at brioche, it's created very differently. In brioche, you're slipping the stitches without a hood, adding a yarn over to them, and knitting the stitch and yarn over together. So we're slipping that purl, adding its hood, knitting the yarn over together with its paired stitch. So already there's some complexity happening there, and because of those slip stitches, we have to knit every row twice to complete a full row. That extra paired stitch you see there on the needle, and it'll be a little bit easier to see this in the 2-color brioche sample I show you in a minute. Those yarn overs that are knit together with every single stitch on both sides in brioche make this fabric extra squishy, bulkier, and have more structure. It looks a lot alike when I pull it this way, but it's not quite as stretchy because of that extra yarn. And the columns of stitches look quite a bit tidier and firmer than they do in the Fisherman's rib, where they're loftier and a bit looser. Now, the scary part, let's pull this off the needle and you can see what happens. The first time I did brioche and I pulled it off the needle to frog it, I just about had a panic attack. So you can see it's doing a similar thing to the ribbing and to the Fisherman's rib. The purl stitches are popping to the back, the knit stitches are popping to the front. But the knit stitches also have these hoods to deal with. So if I go to put this back on the needle, I have to put it back on each knit stitch with its hood, and then grab that purl, and then grab the knit stitch with its hood. You see what's going on here. So you can imagine if I took this needle out completely and we ripped all this back several rows, you'd be pretty tense trying to get this back on the needle. So when I drop a stitch in brioche, I'm not just dropping one stitch, I'm dropping a whole relationship of stitches. And now I have to try and get all of these back onto the needle the way they were supposed to go. This is why brioche feels harder to read. It's architecture. We prefer engineered complexity, Oscar. Now we're going to add some color. In 2-color brioche, each visible row is 2 passes, 1 per color. On this side, the light color dominates. On this side, the darker color dominates. You can see this is also true in this cowl. On this side, the purple dominates, and on this side, the blue is what pops forward. That dominance happens because of how these stitch and yarn over pairs stack on each other. If I separate the columns, you can see the color hiding in between. Both colors are interacting in between every stitch, but one of them stands out more. This is why 2-color brioche looks so dramatic. It highlights that depth and layering. You're getting some very cool structure and color blending here. And that's the big draw. We'll pull this one off the needle too, so you can take a look at it. I find in the 2-color, it's actually a little bit easier to see what's going on because of those 2 colors. Because each time you're going to have the primary color as a loop and the secondary color as a hood. So if you're picking it back up, you're picking up the primary and the secondary, then grabbing the secondary purl in the back, then the primary and the secondary hood, the purl in the back, the primary, the secondary hood, etc. You see where I'm going with that. So ironically enough, the two-color brioche is actually a little bit easier to read and put back together than the single color. Now that we have a better idea of what brioche actually is and how it works, let's go talk about its applications. Now, the vast majority of brioche patterns you will see will be shawls, cowls, scarves, and other accessories. So let's talk garments, because this is where this stitch's structure has a big impact. Brioche is not naturally floppy. It's not drapey by default. It has lots of body. And if you knit it too tightly, it can become very dense. If you want drape in brioche, you often need to knit it at a looser gauge or use a yarn that has little or no bite, like a viscose, a silk, or in this case, alpaca. Alpaca naturally has very little elasticity and therefore lots of drape. And then there's shaping. If you're going to knit something that requires shaping, you have to keep it dead simple. Brioche decreases and increases exist, but this is not a stitch that anyone chooses for hyper-fitted, heavily contoured garments. I am, in fact, in the process of knitting a brioche garment. This is my very sad start of a top-down brioche cardigan that I am knitting for Mr. Handsome. This is a Carol Feller design, and it's called Novio. And every time I pick it up, I think, wow, this is really cool. Where the heck was I? And then I put it back down because I don't have the time to figure out where I was. And I am asking that question despite the fact that I am using running markers to keep track of where I am. I almost frogged this and started over because I was so lost last time I picked it up. But after rereading the pattern super carefully, I finally figured out what was happening and where I was in the process, and I was able to get going again. Correct, Oscar. It's don't leave it for more than a day or two knitting. No joke. So let's acknowledge the intimidation factor with brioche. Knitters often say that brioche makes them feel like beginners again. Yeah, even me. Because if something goes wrong, you're not just fixing a drop stitch. Remember, you are fixing a paired structure. In Fisherman's rib, I can visually follow those columns. In brioche, I have to identify which strand is the stitch and which is the yarn over. That's the learning curve. Once you understand that pairing, it becomes a bit more logical. But until then, the whole thing can feel mysterious and kind of out of control. So how do we save our sanity? Because right now, I can't even get this back on the needle. This is where Lifelines are going to be your friend. Brioche is dramatically less stressful when you assume that you may need to rip it back and make sure you're prepared for that. Here are two options for doing Lifelines. You can take a smooth cotton yarn or some floss or just something that's not overly sticky and quite a bit thinner than the yarn you're currently working with, and thread it onto a tapestry needle. Then you are going to put it through every stitch on the needle. Don't try to take it off the needle unless you want to practice putting it back on with the lifeline in it. You can just thread in and out of the stitches. And I know I could grab the hand cam, but I'm much too lazy here. So you can just every couple of stitches, make sure you are getting in the stitch and you're not catching any of the yarn and snagging it. You want to get in every stitch. It's really hard to do this from this side. And every couple, just pull it through. Make sure that you're catching the hood with the brioche stitch as you go along, and do that every, whatever you're comfortable with. I'd probably recommend about every 5 rows for brioche. And then what happens is when you frog back to that row that has the lifeline in it, all of your stitches will stay on top of that lifeline, and you'll be able to follow the lifeline with the needle and get them all back on the needle properly. The other way to do this, that's faster and easier, is if you have interchangeable circular needles that have this hole in the base. That hole serves 2 purposes. One purpose is for putting your little torquing tool in there to tighten up the needle when you're attaching a new tip. But the other purpose is you can thread your lifeline through that hole. And I find it way easier to do that with a needle threader. Put the needle threader through the hole, put the lifeline yarn into the needle threader, put the needle threader in the hole, put the lifeline yarn into the needle threader. What is wrong with me today? Oh my God, I just trashed my needle threader. Put the needle threader in the hole, put the lifeline yarn into the needle threader, and then pull it through. Make sure you leave yourself lots of tail so that it doesn't pull out halfway through, and then just carry on knitting your row as usual, and the lifeline will just follow along. Your knitting will slide onto the lifeline along with the cord. If your gauge allows for it, you could also use silicone cord instead of this. I just haven't quite worked out how you get it to stay as you go. But you know what? I bet if you went and checked with Laura Nelkin, she would know. She knows everything about using these guys. Another option, if you want to get really fiddly about this, is before you pull any stitches off the needle, you can put a locking marker in each of those stitch and hood pairs to keep them together, to stop the whole thing from devolving into this. Super fiddly and time consuming, but may save you lots more time later in trying to put this back together. Prepared knitting is peaceful knitting. All right, fine. Peaceful adjacent. Now, this was by no means a proper brioche tutorial, so if you want to learn how to do brioche properly, there are some excellent resources. Nancy Marchant is foundational in the brioche world. This is Knitting Fresh Brioche. This is one of her books, and this book really codifies the 2-color brioche and explores its design potential deeply with tons of great illustrations. If you want structural understanding and pattern development, Nancy's your gal. There are also really strong video teachers out there who can walk you through every aspect of brioche clearly. Nancy Marchant has classes on Craftsy's platform. Patty Lyons has brioche classes on her own teaching platform. And on YouTube, you can try Carol Feller, who is the designer of the cardigan I am knitting for Mr. Handsome. Or you could try Norman at Nimble Needles, Very Pink Knits. There are lots more, but those are the ones I would recommend for now. It's entirely possible I may do a full brioche tutorial myself someday, but I will not do that until I feel like I have knit enough of it, including garments, to teach it responsibly. You know how I am. Yes, plus field research. Before we wrap up, I want to show you something really important because even though I don't knit brioche constantly, I do love it. So here are some patterns that I would genuinely consider knitting and have had sitting in my brioche favorites bundle for a while. Starting with a pattern that came up fairly recently called the Hearth Side Pullover by Wool and Pine. This is 2-color brioche. It's a fingering weight yarn knit on a 4.5 and 5 millimeter needle, so add a very loose gauge for nice drape. And the shoulders are shaped in a garter stitch wedge, which I thought was very clever. So you're not trying to do any shaping in the brioche stitch itself. Otherwise, it looks like the sweater is a really simple drop shoulder construction. The pattern also includes video tutorials, which I'm sure will be fantastic, and it has a cardigan sibling. It takes 1,800 yards for the smallest size of this sweater, and that brings me to something I forgot to say about knitting brioche, and that is that it eats up yarn like crazy. So if you're on a stash busting binge right now, like I know a lot of people are, brioche might be the answer, especially if you're looking to use up a lot of fingering weight yarn in a single pattern. And this next one that's intrigued me for a while is the Newspaper Pullover by Joji Locatelli. Again, it's a 2-color brioche, fingering weight again, this time knit on a 3.5 millimeter needle, so a little tighter gauge, but the yarn that she used is a merino silk blend. So there's your drape factor. Both merino and silk are fairly drapey yarns, and the two of them together are definitely going to help break down some of that firm structure that brioche can have. I think the raglan shaping is really cool and probably pretty easy to navigate in the brioche stitch. And yeah, once again, this is a real yarn sucker-upper. This one can take up to 3,000 yards for the largest size, which is a 5X, I think. And here's another one from Wool and Pine. This is the Golden Fern Shawl. Fingering yarn again, this time on a 4 millimeter needle. So we're now a little bit between the newspaper and the hearth side in terms of the gauge. And it's a really interesting asymmetrical shape, but because I'm me, I think I would convert the shape of this shawl to a rectangle so that I could sew it up in my signature wrap over style. And the yardage isn't too bad on this pattern. It's like 800 to 900 yards, depending on whether you add the contrast border. My wrap over version would probably need a bit more yarn than that. Or, even more fun, I could pick a stitch or two from this book and design my own brioche wrap over. Yeah, I like that idea. And another one that made me stop my scrolling in its tracks is this broadleaf slouch hat. Yeah, again by Wool and Pine. You can see I'm on a little Wool and Pine bent today. This one is fingering yarn and mohair silk lace weight held together. So a couple of things to love here. The small section of 2-color brioche and then easy stocking stitch for the rest of the hat. And it looks good with or without a fancy pom-pom. If you successfully knit the hat, you have all the skills you need to knit the matching sweater. And finally, there's this modern sweater shell. You could call it a swancho, but for no good reason whatsoever, I really dislike the word swancho. But I digress. This, whatever it is called Noose, Knus, by Olga Burayaya Kefelian for Woolfolk. And it's a modified fisherman's rib. It's also currently in my queue. Look at how cool this shoulder detail is down onto the sleeve. This looks so dang wearable and squishy without dealing with the brioche. So what you will notice about these patterns is that brioche garments keep the shaping simple. They rely on the stitch itself for impact. They often use looser gauges to create drape, and the shawl uses brioche for texture and drama without a bunch of structural stress. The hat uses brioche where warmth and body are assets to the design, and the whatever it is in the fisherman's rib gives me that squish and modern structure without having to do the full pairing complexity. So both brioche and fisherman's rib can have their place in your knitting arsenal. But you might still be asking, why would anyone knit brioche instead of fisherman's rib when they look so much alike? Well, if you're me, you might do it because you want that layered structure, because you want that dramatic color interplay, and because you appreciate engineered fabric, which I do. But that structure requires awareness, like we just talked about. Gauge matters, drape matters, shaping should be thoughtful. And for me, I really love the extra structure of the brioche, but I choose it intentionally. And I choose fisherman's rib when I want some squish, but with more simplicity. Like this cool scarf that I knit for my friend who lives in a place where it snows all winter. Tons of brioche squish, none of the fuss. So the stitches aren't interchangeable. They are tools, and good knitters choose tools on purpose. Not even close, Oscar. So let's hear it. If you love brioche, tell us what made it click for you. And if you've avoided it like the plague, tell us why. And if you've ever thought those two stitches were basically the same thing, now you know they're not. They're really, really not. I say goodbye. Oscar says goodbye. We both say knit your joy and hope to see you again soon. Bye.